Welcome to the main event. So we've talked about having an entertaining beginning and then moving on to some elaborative detail, adding some suspense, and then it comes to the main event. This is by far the biggest portion of your story. So the main point I want to make is that your main events should be stretched out. It should be the largest part of your story because it's the most important part of your story. You should tell it in slow motion. You should include action, descriptions, thoughts and feelings, dialogues and exclamations, sound effects sometimes. I always think about this guy here who says, "Let's get ready to rumble," to describe stretching it out. At the end of the main events, there's a solution or an end of the experience. So how might you stretch this out? Well, you can ask yourself these questions. Action, what did you do? Description, what did you see, hear, feel? Thoughts or feelings, what were you worrying or wondering or feeling? Dialogue and exclamation, what did you say or exclaim? And sound effects, what did you hear? So you ask yourself this question and then you write down that sentence. So an example of a main event could be, I ran and hid in the basement when a tornado came through town. So what is that? So I ran and hid in the basement when a tornado came through town, right? There is some action, running and hiding in the basement. There's a little bit of description in the basement. And a tornado came through town. So a little bit of action, a little bit of description. So that's example 1. Example 2, I heard the sounds that told us there was a tornado coming. Then I grabbed my radio so I could hear what was happening. Then I ran as fast as I could to the basement to hide. My mother, my brother, and baby sister ran there too. Dad was at work and he had to hide in his building. Then we heard a lot of noise, and then the house shook, and then it was quiet. After that, the tornado was over and we climbed back up the stairs to see what happened. Okay, let's start with action. Grabbed my radio, ran as fast as I could. My baby sister ran down there too. Dad had to hide in his building. The house shook. We climbed back up. So there was some action happening. What about description? Well, you heard the sirens. You went down to the basement. Your mother and brother and baby sister and dad were there. It was a building. Heard a lot of noise. Then it was quiet. And then you got to see what happened. Okay, so there's some descriptions. Can we find any thoughts or feelings? I heard the sirens that told us that there was a tornado coming, and I grabbed my radio so I could hear what was happening. Then I ran as fast as I could down to the basement to hide. My brother, my mother, and baby sister ran down there too. Dad was at work, he had to hide in the building. Then we heard a lot of noise, and then the house shook, and then it was quiet. After that, the tornado was over, and we climbed back up to see what had happened. So no, there was no thoughts or feelings in there. What about dialogue and exclamation? Did anyone say anything in here? No. So none of that as well. And what about sound effects? We heard sirens, but there was no onomatopoeia in here. So in this piece, it's pretty good. They used action and description. But no thoughts or feelings, no dialogue or exclamation, and no sound effects. So, let's see our third example. Example 3. Woo, woo! The sirens blared across our town. I knew this was the signal that a tornado was close behind, because it had happened before. My body began to shake and my stomach did a flip. What about Dad, I thought. Where will he go? Before I could continue that thought, my mother shouted up the stairs. Come on down now, hurry! I grabbed my trusty old radio that Grandpa had given me. He told me it was the best way to stay in touch with the outside world when a big storm was coming because it didn't need electricity, only batteries. Skipping 2 and 3 stairs at a time, I raced down into the dark, dingy basement. I had to stop a moment and adjust my eyes to the darkness. The basement smelled musty, like old sneakers, and there were cobwebs hanging in the corner. I put my hand out in front of me to push them out of the way, and finally made it to the area we had cleared for our storm cellar. In the shelf in the corner, there were water bottles and a large flashlight. I also noticed a basket of batteries in all sizes and plenty of food in cans, just in case. Suddenly, I heard a terrible whining noise. Mum whispered, "It's just the wind. Don't worry." I looked at my brother with wide eyes, and he looked back with tears in his. We held hands as the wind picked up and rattled the whole house. I started to sing my favorite song from the radio, but my voice choked up. Before I knew it, the noises stopped and were replaced by an eerie silence. I cautiously tiptoed up the stairs and opened the door. When I got outside, I breathed a sigh of relief. The storm had passed and left our house intact. The phone rang, and I ran back inside to get it. It was Dad, calling to say he was safe, and making sure we were too. Now there's an excellent main event. Okay, so in terms of action, grabbed my trusty wrong color. Action, grabbed the radio, raced down into the dark, dingy basement, stopped, adjusted the eyes to the darkness, put my hand out, looked at my brother, we held hands, started to sing, cautiously tiptoed, breathed a sign of relief, and then Dad called. So those were the actions, right? Grabbed the radio, raced downstairs, adjusted their eyes, put their hand out, looked at their brother, held hands, started to sing, tiptoed back upstairs, breathed a sigh of relief, and called Dad. The description is really strong. Sirens blared. My body began to shake and my stomach did a flip. Mother shouted, "Trusty old radio." It didn't need electricity, only batteries. Skipping 2 and 3 stairs at a time. Dark, dingy basement. Basement smelled like musty, like old sneakers. There was cobwebs hanging in the corner. And finally made it to the area we had cleared for our storm cellar. There were water bottles and a large flashlight, basket of batteries, and plenty of food in cans. Suddenly, I heard a terrible whining noise. Mother whispered. Wide eyes, tears in his. Wind picked up and rattled the whole house. Favorite song, but my voice choked up. The noises stopped and were replaced by an eerie silence. Cautiously tiptoed up the stairs. When I got outside, I breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, so a lot of description about what's happening and being as specific and elaborative as the author could. Thoughts or feelings. We didn't have any in our previous piece. Let's see if we can find some thoughts or feelings in this one. I knew this was the signal. That's a thought. What about Dad? I thought. Where will he go? So, right, these questions are really effective, especially at the beginning. And then dialogue. So, come on down, hurry. It's just the wind, don't worry. And sound effects. Woo woo. Okay. So as you can see, an excellent piece has all 5 parts: action, description, thoughts and feelings, dialogue, explanation, and sound effects. Now, depending on your story, you might have mostly description or mostly action, and that's okay. It depends on the story. But having a little bit of all 5 of those strategies adds some strong effect to your writing. Okay, so here's our writing idea. Let's try to stretch out this main event. Then the Avengers assembled and battled Thanos and his army. So that's not stretched out enough. That's too short. That's not a main event. It's just, well, it is a main event. It's just not a well-written main event. So, if you would like, you can rewrite that main event using all 5 main event questions. Now, I put the clip of this actual scene here. So if you want to watch it, please do so. But remember, I'm not paying you millions of dollars, so you do not need to have every single detail from this clip. But if you want some ideas, there's some really good stuff in there. Am I filming right now? I am. Ooh. So that's it. That is the main event, the most important part of your story.